Which actor crushed a role so hard that nobody else will be able to live up? T.S. Absolutely criminal that he never got an Emmy for that role. I still maintain that Dr. Cox is one of the most complex characters to ever appear on television. He's a self-righteous, depressed, borderline alcoholic jackass who nonetheless feels an incredible sense of duty to his patients and the practice of medicine in general. He thinks that he's Superman, and simultaneously loves and despises that idea. Scrubs usually focuses on how much the younger cast like JD, Elliot, and Turk grow over the series, but if you look at Cox, the way he mentors JD, builds a successful relationship with Jordan, deals with the death of his best friend, and becomes a father, he grows just as much. God, I love that character. Jodie Foster as Clarice Starling. I particularly love the scene where she looks at Buffalo Bill's victim and you hear her voice crack during the first part of the description, where she is looking at tiny personal details like painted fingernails, but then go clinical and determined when she sees the wounds on the girl's back. Playing badass women often veers either towards emotionless and stalwart, or basically aping an 80s action male role. Foster nailed the emotional vulnerability, ambition, and courage of that character in minute, but profound ways. No one compares. I often have thoughts of Rivers' potential career when I'm re-watching old movies. Indie and Sneakers, even though kind of small roles. He was very captivating when he was on screen. I wonder if he would have had a Leo DiCaprio or a Hanks type career, maybe toward the end he even goes the action star Keanu route. I do this with Brandon Lee also. Say what you will about The Crow and maybe it wasn't that demanding of a role but he acted the hell out of that character. Every little motion he does or line of dialogue, facial expression is charismatic AF, even the tone and volume he has in every scene is just amazing for someone who more or less started as an action star. Those two guys would have been absolute bosses if they hadn't passed away. That's not even close to describing the epic level fuck up that was the Aladdin marketing disaster or the true fallout as a result. Robin Williams was working on a passion project with another studio called Toys and he didn't want to directly compete with it. However, one of the animators for the movie showed him test footage of the genie synced with some of his stand-up recordings that it convinced Williams to take the role despite his misgivings. But he still wanted Toys to succeed, so he made a very clear deal with Disney. He would work for union scale pay, a couple $1,000s instead of his usual asking price of millions, if they kept his name and the genie's likeness out of the movie's advertising. Unfortunately, the person in charge of advertising the movie was Jeffrey Katzenberg, who immediately broke the deal. Aladdin was released a month before Toys and utterly destroyed it at the box office, ensuring the movie wouldn't even make back budget. Williams was so furious that he would never work for Disney again so long as Katzenberg was still employed by the company, and he was the head of the studio's division. He sued Disney in retribution and made it so that the genie couldn't be used in advertising for the company after his death. It's the reason why the songs he sang in the original Aladdin aren't on streaming sites anymore. This was actually one of the many screw-ups that helped force Katzenberg out of the Disney company. Among other things, he had angered some of his other creators such as the writers and directors of the Disney Renaissance-era movies for claiming sole responsibility for the turnaround of Disney's movie successes during this period, and in particular, he had earned the personal ire of Roy E. Disney, nephew of Walt and son of the original Roy Disney. And if it weren't due to the board directly intervening and giving Pixar another chance, then the executive decisions he made on Toy Story would have seen the movie cancelled outright. The original cut of the movie he was involved in, called the Black Friday cut, soured the board when they saw an early cut of the movie made of concept art that they immediately put production on hold and told the studio that it would have to be completely redone. In fact, the Black Friday cut sees a lot of material that would later become staples of DreamWorks, which was founded by Katzenberg after he left Disney. The movie relied on mean-spirited insult humor and the original cut version of Woody was a complete bastard. He threatened the other toys to keep them in line, used violence to keep the others in line and deliberately threw Buzz out of the window. However, What really saw him quit was when he tried to call in a favor from Michael Eisner to become the company's president right after Frank Wells' death in a helicopter crash, which Eisner reneged on, partially because of his sudden and frequent screw-ups making him a bad candidate, also because Roy threatened a stock owner's revolt if he got the job. People underestimate the importance of a strong believable villain's role in a story. Gladiator is one of the best movies of all time, and that comes from a well-paced story, with a great hero, and a beautiful setting with wonderful music and effects, but I feel the thing that really seasons all of those elements and brings all of it to a hot boil is Commodus. You are engaged with the story, not just because you want to see the hero succeed, not just because the imagery is wonderful and the cinematics engrossing, but you are chained to the story because you have to see that asshole lose. Our class was supposed to be reading 1984. One day I showed up to class and our teacher hit us with a pop quiz on the previous night's reading assignment. I had not done the reading, so I was completely unprepared. I did my best to guess the answers on the first couple of questions, but after that, I knew it would be obvious that I didn't do the assignment, so I started writing my answers as observations about the book. My last answer was along the lines of, "This book is boring" or "This book is weird." When I got my quiz back, he had written, "How would you know? You haven't read it?" I saw that and knew I was going to prove him wrong. That night I sat down and read the whole book with the intent of coming to class the next day and telling him why it was weird and boring. Instead, I liked the book and I came to class and told him what I would have done differently / the same as the main character. He challenged some of my thoughts and I had to do some introspection. I appreciated that he called me out and that he didn't dismiss me when I came back after reading the entire book. From then on, I always made sure I was prepared for assignments. It has paid off in my career when I have been challenged in my work. I have been able to point out why I came to the conclusions that I did and have earned the respect of many people in my company as a result. I went to 13 years of Catholic school. My dad was agnostic, but my mom was from a large Catholic family, even though she wasn't particularly devout herself. I was an altar boy, went through the relevant sacraments, earned the Cub Scout and Boy Scout medals for Catholicism, and all that jazz, even though I didn't particularly have strong feelings one way or the other. It's just what everyone I knew did. In order to graduate, every student had to have an exit interview with the school priest to discuss your future as an adult in the church. I walked in for my, and Father T just stared at me for a minute, and then said, "Enrith, let's be honest and not waste our time. We both know that you aren't really a believer and have no intention of continuing in the faith when you leave." I was shocked. I had never said a word to anyone that would indicate this, I just never really gave it much thought. I pointed out that I'd done all the things that had been expected of me. I was a good kid, didn't drink, didn't fornicate, hell, I didn't even take the Lord's name in vain at that point. I asked him why on earth he would say that about me. He said he just had a hunch, and was he wrong? I thought about, decided he was right, and never looked back. So I have a priest to thank for showing me that not only had I lost my faith, but that I may have never had any to begin with. Our physics teacher used to give us tricky questions after explaining concepts to get us used to solving them. In one of the questions I found his answer to be wrong and corrected him. He listened to me but couldn't find where he went wrong. It turned into a debate with each of us trying to convince the other. Every time I tried to convince him I had the lingering doubt, what if I'm wrong? What if I made some careless stupid mistake which gave me the wrong answer? The only reason I still had the courage to hold my own view was the teacher himself. He never dismissed my question, never treated me like an ignorant kid questioning his teacher who knew better. By the end we had run out of time as the class had ended. Most of my classmates were either trying to convince me he was right by quoting his initial explanation verbatim or expecting me to be proven wrong. Even if I was right, I was expecting him to either ignore my question or to skip past it. But in the next class he not only told the class I was right, he explained where he went wrong in his initial explanation and turned it into a teaching moment where he showed us that anyone could make mistakes but wisdom lies in fixing them. He later told me that even if I were wrong, what I did was right, that I should never hesitate to question anything or anyone as long as I do it in a respectful and courteous way. That lesson never left me, and I just hope that whenever I question something, disagree with someone, or I am proven wrong, I can do it with enough grace and humility to make him proud. This one is really fucked up. Junior year we had a math teacher we all made fun of because she was a masculine lesbian. I never did myself, but I laughed at the jokes about her and never spoke up or called anyone out, so I consider myself guilty of it. This was 2003 and the height of South Park/Family Guy type humor for a teenager, where everything was funny if it was racist or sexual. Anywho, she was gone for like 3 weeks. We had a sub come in and no one knew what happened to Miss Forrest. She finally came back and looked horrible, like 20 pounds lighter than she already was, greasy hair, bags under her eyes. She looked dead. She started in on our lesson, with the overhead projector that she still preferred, and put the pen down and told us her girlfriend lost their child and that's why she was gone. She told us how she knows everyone made fun of her about how she's some mean manly lesbian, but she tried hard to make math enjoyable for us and she was excited about being a mother and all this really personal stuff. She didn't say any quote specifically that stood out, but the whole hour or so of class she drilled into us that everyone is a person. I saw teachers as a bunch of lame asses sometimes, but you grow up and you see it's just a person trying to help a bunch of kids learn something. But I applied that to everyone. You don't know what people are going through. This crappy feeling resurfaced when Chadwick Boseman passed. Everyone tee-hee at him looking tired and frail, and then felt bad after knowing he had cancer for like 4 years. Miss Forrest was a good example to just be fucking nice. English person checking in. I was doing okay through secondary school and GCSEs, always got average/good grades, and parent-teacher was always the same. Mum and dad were very loving, but gradually mum's drinking got worse and the tension at home got worse, as well as my own MH problems that I didn't share. Got good GCSE grades and stayed on to do A-levels. By this point I didn't want to be home. Me and my brother would plan on running away all the time. I worked a lot to get out the house and gradually my grades started to drop. I put my parents off parent-teacher night, saying it would just be the same as always. Anyway, inevitable happened and I failed all my A-levels. I had planned on moving out to a nearby city and going to community college to do different A-levels, getting a job to pay my way, etc. I was chatting with my favorite teacher and he told me, well, good luck, but just so you know, people that redo A-levels like you don't do any better. I was so mad. He didn't know my background because me and my brother kept it quiet at school and I didn't really have any friends, but I trusted him. It made me so determined to go and succeed and prove him wrong, and I spent every day with his words in my head. Through hard work at both school and my job, I managed to get through and pass the second time and got an unconditional offer to my first choice university. They had previously rejected me the first time around. I made some amazing friends at uni, both in England and when I studied abroad in the US. Sadly, I never got to see my teacher to tell him what happened, but I remember his words to this day. I failed math from 3rd grade up until sophomore year of high school. My 3rd grade teacher gave me anxiety relating to asking for help when I was confused in math. I remember feeling really bad this one time about not understanding the material after asking for help from her, but it didn't end well. I refused to ask questions afterwards and would silently struggle and fail. I failed Algebra 1 when I first took it freshman year. The teacher I failed with never made me feel bad for the low grades I brought in when taking tests/completing assignments. I remember her telling me that she could see I was really trying to make progress to learn, and she would have me take it again with another teacher that had a different method of teaching. Sophomore year I really focused on trying to learn, taking notes, and worked on getting over my anxiety of asking questions. The way my new teacher taught accommodated multiple learning styles. I felt safe to come in after school and spend extra time to make sure I understood. My teacher told me she was very proud of my progress and was a very bright student. That I wasn't stupid, I was really smart but just wasn't learning in the way that worked for me. I ended up getting my first AA month in when the unit test rolled around. At the end of the year I was crying when my report card had AB where Algebra 1 was. I haven't failed math since. I ended up testing a few points under level 4 for algebra. And then took a year's worth of geometry in 6 weeks during summer school getting C's or better. One time I went abroad with my high school and my teachers refused to change me out of my homestay that had me in an attic with poor roofing and bugs were literally everywhere. I told one of the teachers that I had taken pictures of the bugs everywhere and she told me to delete them. I will admit, from the lack of support from the teachers, because all I wanted to do was sleep without waking up to 3 to 10 crushed bugs around me in the morning, I started to act out. We come back to the US and I have to have a meeting with the principal because these teachers want me suspended for acting out. The same teacher to whom I mentioned the fact that I took pictures, you know, the one that said to delete them, looks me square in my eyes and says during the suspension meeting, "Oh, that's odd, do you have any pictures of these bugs?" With a shitty grin. And I go, "You told me to delete them." She does an evil giggle and goes, "Well, I don't remember any of that." And I go, "That's okay, you thought I took them with my digital camera, but I actually took them with my disposable camera." And I reached in my bag and threw all the pictures on the table and I grinned back at her. I was very shy in high school, still am, and had a lot of health stuff going on mainly in my senior year. A teacher I had in 9th, 11th, and now 12th grade will always stick with me. Not only did he have my back during the times I would get the courage to speak in class to be spoken over, it was a small group and we were all close-knit, he also seemed to know that I was going through something senior year. I mean I did miss a lot of school, but he never explicitly said anything because I always kept up with my work and was still doing relatively well. So it gets to be the last week of school, and each year he would give each of his seniors a senior song. He claimed he didn't put much thought behind them and would just pick a song that came to him, but I don't know how true that was. It happens to be my turn, and he ends up playing Fight Song by Rachel Platten. I know, kind of cheesy, but at the time the song was newer, and something about it just stuck with me. It's like he was saying that he knew I was going through something but that I was a fighter. He ended up being my favorite teacher from high school because of the way he supported me and always gave me a chance to speak up. A few years after I graduate he ends up passing away in a tragic way. I still think about him a lot, especially when I hear Fight Song. It's like he gave me that song to carry with me and remember my strength. In my sophomore year of high school I took an AP history class. The teacher happened to be my history teacher in middle school, so she pretty much knew how to teach me as well as most of my classmates. Around the end of the second quarter, I fell into a deep depression. Long story short, I missed school for nearly 6 or so months of school. I came back but wasn't much better than I was before. The day I came back was the day we had to do a practice test for the AP exam. I did it and pretty much cried thinking that I fucked up big time. The next day we got them back and I had a 1 out of 5. During class, my teacher was telling all the students we were going to begin reviewing, and that on average, a student usually increases their score by about 2 when comparing the AP test and the practice test. For those that don't know, even getting a 3/5 isn't that great when applying for college credit. Hearing this, I kind of just gave up on the spot. I completely zoned out until the bell rang. I couldn't wait to go back into that depressive state so that I couldn't disappoint anyone anymore. I was prepared to wait until the next year to repeat and start the grade over, so I hopped out of my seat and tried to rush to the door. My teacher stopped me as soon as I got up and asked to speak with me. I thought I was in trouble for zoning out, so I kinda just stood and waited for everyone else to leave so we could speak. What I heard made me bawl my eyes out. This being a day old it might not be seen, but when I was 12 I told my science teacher that I recited all 12 months in a row. I was very excited to be able to do that for the first time and had to tell someone. He said, and I quote, "Why are you excited? Everyone can do that." Then he walked away. Will never forget that. I felt very stupid and just thought I was. I stopped trying at school and just figured if I'm that stupid it doesn't matter. My junior year of high school I had a teacher that noticed I was acing tests but basically zeroing out or just barely passing regular work. He asked what the problem was and could he help. I explained that I am basically behind and stupid compared to everyone, so what difference does it make? He explained that I wasn't stupid at all and why I would think that. I told him about my 7th grade teacher and what happened. How since then nothing has shown me different. He said that wasn't normal at all, and yes, everyone at that age should be able to recite the months, but if I couldn't there must be a reason. Parent-teacher conference and tests later. I have dyslexia. Mine manifests in the ability to put things in order. Alphabet, calendar year, grocery lists, etc. My brain mixes them up and it takes a lot of effort and repetition to keep the list in order. 4 years of thinking I was stupid, one teacher not worth a damn, and apparently none of my other teachers even bothering to notice. It took one teacher to make things horrible and one teacher to make things 100x better.